All right, so I'm going to try to keep this as short and sweet as possible. I'm going to cover a lot. I'm going to talk about the different layers that you need for your background. I'm going to talk about merging layers together, as well as um, motion tweening and organizing your scene here, or all of your layers. So let's get started. Let's start with just what we need to see, which is your foreground, middle ground, and background. The whole purpose of this is to get those layers completed um, and in sync with your character's walk cycle. So, first thing we need to do for this assignment, we're extending our walk cycle, not just one walk cycle, but we're going to extend this and loop it out to 5 seconds long. Okay, we're not creating a GIF out of this. We are extending the footage that we have. So these frames right here underneath my character folder, I have this walk cycle. And what I'm going to do is take those and copy them and paste them over until I get at least 5 seconds worth of footage here. So I'm going to kind of make that fit a little better. And I'm going to take these layers or these frames and I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy these frames. And you should have 32 frames if timed correctly. I'm going to go to the very next empty frame, right click, and paste frames. So there, I can keep doing that one by one until I get to the end, or now I can take this, copy these, next empty frame, paste frames, and now it extends beyond my 5 second mark. I'm going to test it out and make sure that everything is looping as far as my walk cycle goes, and that looks correct. Okay, timing stayed the same, everything should still look good. Now, looking at the background, what I want to do is, and you should have some ideas already sketched up for this. Now what you have to make sure of, though, is that when you redraw them or you create them for animate, and you need to have a foreground that is probably at least twice as wide as your stage. So you can kind of see that. Let me turn off my other layers here. So here is just my foreground and my character. All right. So my foreground, and this is just a sketch, not completed by any means. I have that completed right here, and it needs to be at least twice as long, at least for my character's walk, in order to go by really fast. Okay. My middle ground, the pink area, is a little bit less. Okay. So a little bit less than my foreground because it's not going to need to cover as much. It's going to go by slower. And the same thing for my background, which is the blue area here. It's less than my middle ground because that's going to be the slowest part. Now, what I need to do, though, is I'm going to save some space here, is extend each of my layers out to the same length as my character layer, which goes out to frame 128, it says right here. So I have that selected. I'm going to shift select straight down so it highlights all of these. Okay, so I just select this top one, hold shift, select the bottom one, and I'm going to hit F5. And that opens it all up for animation, right? I even have, I think, one extra there. Let me open this up and see. Yeah, I have an extra one here, which I don't need. So I'm going to right click on that and remove a frame. And that way my character is walking. There's the environment layers, but they're not moving yet. Okay. What I want to make sure of is that you have all of these drawn out, colored, completed. If you end up with extra objects and things that you have like in your foreground, middle ground, and background, then what I would do is this. I'm going to create groups. So I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call this front. Everything in the front of this scene is going to go into that folder. Same thing for the middle. I'm going to do middle for my middle ground and everything that's going to be in the middle ground. I'm going to do it same thing for the background. So I'm going to put back here. Both of these layers are considered the back, so I'm just going to take those and put them in there. All right. So I've got everything tucked away in nice, neat folders. Okay. It's going to be important because if you have something like this for mine, I have the sketch for the foreground. What I'm also going to end up doing is a color layer for my foreground. So when I do that, I would create a new layer here. I would put it behind my foreground layer. I would call it color. Oops, color. And then on that layer is where I would take a brush and start to paint the inside of my sketched lines here. Okay. Once you do something like this and you start to complete your sketching and your different layers, what you would then do is merge them together. That way you don't have to tween a color layer and your drawing layer at the same time or at different times. What you want to do is tween them at the same time. So if I finish this, and I am not finished with this, but let's say I finished it here, and I wanted to tween these, what I'm going to end up doing is shift selecting both of these, right click, merge the layers together. So now they become one. So when I hide them, they are both hidden together, the color and the sketch. You want to make sure everything is done before you do that, because other than doing Control Z back a few steps, there's no way to unmerge those layers. Okay, so that would be like a last thing that you do before you're ready to animate them. And so you would go and merge those layers together. So that was just something quick I wanted to touch on for while you're creating your backgrounds. All right, so let's get into moving these objects around. So I need to move this whole foreground past and create a tween for it. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to create motion tween. Oh, there we go. Right click, create motion tween, and it says, hey, you're going to turn this into a symbol, and you say okay. Motion tween is started. It's not finished. You can see that my symbol is here now. All of my foreground is a symbol because this blue box tells me so. And I'm going to set, and it's set. I have a key pose right here, and its original state. Now what I'm going to do is take this to the very end. And what I want to do is make my last pose. So I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard. I'm going to click and drag it all the way across this way. So right about there. And it creates this line with little dots on it, and that tells me the path that this motion tween is taking. It also shows me I created its end path right here on that little pose right there. And so now when I scrub, it creates that motion. And so this is why you would want to wait until everything is colored and completed first. Makes it a lot easier. So that is my foreground. Now let's jump to, turn that off, and let's jump to my middle ground, which is here. I'm going to do the same steps. I'm going to select that. Oh, I'm going to unlock it first. Select it, right click on it, create motion tween, convert it to symbol. You say yes. There's the blue box, tells you it's a symbol. I'm going to move this playhead to the very end. Then I'm going to take my move tool, my selection tool, hold shift, shift it across like that, and there's my path, and there is the movement. It moves slower than my foreground, if you look at that. Okay, foreground moves a little bit quicker, as it should. Now, last step is my background. I'm just going to do this one right here. I'm going to unlock it. I'm going to close down this, select my object here, right click, create motion tween. I'm going to go, oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Lock down my foreground. I'm going to go to the end, hide my foreground. Go to the end here, hold shift, slide it across. There we go. It's a little wonky, so I'm going to adjust it down. And there's my background moving really slow. So if I turn on all three, click out here, this right here is just showing the path. It's not going to be there permanently. But now I can see, creates that parallax effect, adds a little bit more depth to my scene. And it also, I want to make sure that the ground that my character is walking on is somewhat in sync with the ground moving by. It doesn't show like a whole lot of, like too much foot slipping underneath on the ground. All right, and that's pretty close. If you wanted to tweak it a little bit, you can take this right here and you can either, oops, I'm on the wrong layer, lock that layer, go to my middle ground layer. Since that is where my character is, and I can adjust this to either shorten or lengthen how fast this little motion path to tell me, that tells it how fast to move across the scene here. So tweak it too much, now there's like a lot of foot slipping on the ground. And so if I want to extend it longer, I can take that and extend it this way and test the motion again. And that's pretty close. And so you can kind of tweak the amount of motion you have in each one of your layers based on this little guide right here. So that is pretty much what we're going for. Trying to finish up your drawings and the art for the foreground, middle ground, and background. And then trying to make sure that the motion is synced up with your walk cycle. Extending this out to at least 5 seconds. That's what we need. All the extra animation, all the extra parts that you'll have animated within your background in your environment don't need to be shown just yet. So there we go. We'll see you next time.